We've covered Teostra weapons, we've covered Camellius weapons. Now I want to finally cover Kushala weapons. And first things first, let's get right into it. Let's go over what the unique rampage skill on the Kushala weapon is. Kushala Dora's Soul affinity gradually increases when continuously landing hits on foes. This may sound like it's like, oh, I wonder how much affinity you can get and how many hits you have to do. Um, it's funny like how like misleading the wording is. It says landing hits on foe. Continuously landing hits on foes kind of implies that you need to just be constantly attacking. But fun fact, you actually only need to land one hit. And right now we are at base 5% right now. We're at base 5%. We're at base 5 because we're actually wearing the wrong armor. That's why we're at base 5. Should be more at base 30. Base 35. We're at base 35. As you can tell, it's been a long night. But with just one hit, we are now at 60. We were at 60. I don't know if you saw it there for a second. 60% affinity from just one hit. One from 35 to 60 of this. So that's, if you're a mathematician out there, that's 25% right from the initial hit. You get an extra 25% affinity. I'm actually wondering with Sword and Shield if it actually could proc from the shield. Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, it does. It does proc from the shield bash. So no worries about needing to actually hit with the sword. But yeah, one hit gives you 25% affinity, and as you can tell, it lasts for quite a while, and it's not like you're just going with one hit. So, how high can it go? Sadly, it has a limit of just 5 additional percent after that. You get that on the 5th hit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 65. So that was 30% total. But it doesn't go higher than that. I promise you, it doesn't go higher than the 30%. Unless I need to do a 100 hit combo or something, but it doesn't go higher than that. So you're probably gonna you're always gonna have at least 25% extra affinity, and 30 when you're doing combos. Having said that, that means you can forego that much base affinity off your build up to towards getting 100%, which is really, really good. So the builds I would recommend as of right now, also to take advantage of also the ice attack on the Kushala weapons. They have the highest base ice attack on them as of right now. Aside from the Teostra dual blades, which has for some reason a higher ice attack than the Kushala dual blades, but I'll show off my dual blades build later. But this is the SNS build I would recommend. All the other weapons I don't think would take advantage of the ice attacks as much, or the ice damage. Sword and Shield actually has a specific elemental attack. The drill slash is actually in the description. It says it does more elemental damage, which I don't know how many other sword skills say that they do more elemental damage. But drill slash combo specifically says it does more elemental damage. So if you spam that, you'll be taking advantage of the elemental. But let's go right into the build. So we actually have a lot. We're actually able to fit in a lot. But keep in mind, this is with just the base sharpness of the weapon. Depending on how comfortable you are with this kind of sharpness, you probably want to fit in 3-speed sharpen if you can, but you may even want to protect the polish, depending on whether you're fighting solo or with a group. May want to put Protective Polish. It would be... Alternatively, you could fit Master's Touch on this build. You could. But you'd probably have to drop some attack. Probably have a different talisman. We do have 35% base affinity with the 6 crit eye and the 5% on the weapon. And keep in mind, we're getting an additional 25% to 30% affinity, so we're going to be overcap on weak points. But it's not the biggest deal. There's not really anything else you can drop to add the attack. I suppose you could, if you really wanted, you could switch to the Hunter Greaves and get 7 attack versus 6, but it's not the biggest difference, and you never really have too much affinity, so not the biggest deal. People always prefer these boots. I use the Hunter Greaves on a lot of my builds, especially if it's especially if you're going overcap with affinity. The talisman I'm using is a 1 slugger, 1 ice attack, and 2 slots, which is perfect for this SNS. Again, if you wanted to use Protective Polish, you could. I do have a Protective Polish charm as well. Alternatively, you could just slot in to Protective Polish if you have 2 level 2 slots. Because right here, I just have 2 attack that go slotted in. I probably wouldn't go with Master's Touch unless you can get 3, but because I haven't tested exactly how good just 2 levels of Master's Touch is, so I would go with 3. But that would kind of mess up the build unless you have any talismans. And honestly, this is a surprisingly strong build. I would only use it against things that are weak to ice. As of right now, it's still kind of like everything's gonna lag behind Tigrex and Nargacuga, sadly. But keep in mind that this isn't the final form of the weapon yet. Teostra, Camelios, and Kushala Weapons are getting upgrades in the next update. I am 99.9% sure. So these are kind of just like the weaker versions of these weapons. So if you make these builds now, they will be okay and do pretty well. They will be okay in general, do pretty well versus anything weak to ice. But once the next update comes out, they will be up there with Tigrex and Nargacuga, if not surpass them, perhaps. You know, so just keep that in mind. As far as my dual blades build, so what I came up with dual blades, something very similar, except we are actually using Master's Touch. These dual blades, they have the lowest attack of all the Kushala weapons, and also the lowest sharpness, but they do have a 2 slot, and having that specific 2 slot allows us to actually slot in 3 levels of Master's Touch. And when testing this out, I was actually able to maintain this little bit of blue sharpness because we were going overcap so much on the affinity. So it's making it much easier to crit on non-weak points. So again, I would just only use this for things that are weak to ice. If you don't want to use Master's Touch, you could always just use Protective Polish. A lot of people just say, oh, just use Protective Polish, it's so much more convenient. It's like, I don't think like sharpening, if your weapon turns green, like in the middle of combat, and the monster is aggro on you, like 100% aggro on you, I don't think it's I don't think it's in your best interest to try to sharpen in the middle of that. So I always prefer Master's Touch when I can. If I have 100% or more affinity, I'll always go Master's Touch. But even here, we don't even need to have a 100% base, because the Kushala set bonus will take us well above it. So I don't need 7 crit eye. You may also notice that I'm using attack over crit element. As far as my testing is shown, probably do like a specific video on it on crit element and melee weapons. But if given the option between 4 attack or 3 crit element, go for the 4 attack. Not to mention it's a lot easier to put in 4 attack into your build. risk fitting in 3 critical element. I would, if I wanted to fit in 3 crit element, I would pretty much just have to drop the Master's Touch, and that's not going to work for this weapon. So, Master's Touch is literally just slotted in. All you would need is a talisman with 2 level 2 slots. Having also Ice Attack on the talisman makes it to where you can slot in some Speed Sharpen, because otherwise you're putting all of your Ice Attack into level 1 slots, which means no Speed Sharpen, and Speed Sharpen even with Master's Touch or with regular polish is still really handy. So I recommend slotting that in whenever you can, unless you get hit a lot, and then I would put Stun Resist. It's probably something I should do. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed these Kushala builds. These are the 2 weapons I would recommend. I was initially thinking that the Greatsword would be really good for like a crit draw elemental build, but sadly because the extra affinity bonus procs after the initial hit, that means that your first hit with the weapon will never get that crit bonus. So for a crit draw Greatsword, your draw attack would never get that crit bonus, which would really kind of suck. So I recommend Dual Blades, SNS, Longsword maybe. Longsword really looks cool. The Switch Axe looks cool, but don't expect them to keep up that well with other rod attack builds unless you're fighting something that's weak to the element. And even then, it's probably still not going to be as strong, so keep that in mind. This is mostly for fashion because Kushala Weapons just looks so damn cool. So, until next time, hit the like, hit the sub, comment, follow me on Twitch. I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next vid. Bye-bye and good night.